All right, everybody, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat Podcast right here on the CLNS Media Network. And welcome to the off season, officially turning the page after that football game or whatever you want to call it on Sunday. But it is Brian Hines, it is Alex Barth here with a lot to talk about for the New England Patriots right now as we are still on Bill Belichick watch at 6 o'clock here on Tuesday. We are still waiting for any sort of word from Bill or Robert Kraft about the head coach's future. He met with the media yesterday, Monday morning, as he does every year at the end of the year, and immediately brought up that he was under contract. He said he's under contract. He's going to keep coming in trying to help the team while he's under contract, which for anyone in this area who has listened to or followed Bill Belichick for the last 20 years, you know that is rare for him to bring up his contract right there. So we can talk about some of the other comments he had, and we'll get into all this other coaching news, but he immediately kind of put his foot down and put the ball in Robert Kraft's court yesterday by saying that. And if you were expecting Bill to either just say, you know, I'm good to move on, or I'm going to sit here and let you facilitate a trade, doesn't look like that's going to happen. Looks like he wants to be here, and now it's Robert Kraft's kind of move here.
Yeah, one of two things. One of two things was communicated from that press conference, and it depends how you look at it. It's glass half full, glass half empty. Bill Belichick sounded like somebody who plans on coming back. So the question is that because he plans on coming back, or because he wants everybody to believe that he plans on coming back? Because either like, hey, he's back, he's here, he's working great, or because we know how Bill is with the messaging and the public perception, all that. If the Patriots and Bill Belichick end up mutually parting ways, if that's what it officially goes down as in the books, you can't look at that press conference. Right. What Bill Belichick basically said is, if I'm not here, it's because they chose not to bring me back. He said, you know, what's best for the organization, what ownership, you know, collaborative effort, what they want to do. It's like that thing, you know, you see in like mob movies, right? Where it's like, oh, if I go missing, you know who did it, right? That's what Bill Belichick, I think, was kind of relaying. Not that means he doesn't want to be back, but right. I want to, he kept saying we, right? We this, we that. He's talking about the organization. He never talks about the organization. He talks about the football team, but he never talks about the organization. And suddenly he sounds like a Patriots fan. When's the last time Bill Belichick truly sounded like a Patriots fan? He wanted it known that if it's up to him, he's staying. Now, that doesn't ultimately mean he's staying. That doesn't even mean necessarily he wants to stay. But he wants that image out there.
Yep. And speaking of the big part of he said, you know, someone asked him if he'd be willing to relinquish his duties in the personnel department, which has been a big kind of discussion here. Could you keep him as the head coach and bring in a GM, whether it's someone who he's got ties to, like Dave Ziegler or John Robinson, or would he welcome someone completely new? I know we've talked about that a lot, and someone asked him about that, and he said, I'm for whatever collectively we decide as an organization is the best thing to help our football team. And I know a lot of people saw that quote and listened to it and said, oh, he's ready to give up these duties and just coach the team. But I think, you know, the key word was, you know, or words was like collectively still we have to decide. So he's still going to be involved in that. And then the next part, you know, the next sentence, he said, you know, if someone's got to have final say, you know, I still have final say as of now. So where were you kind of at with these, like that whole quote about the whole GM duties? Because it still seemed like, you know, he said we could talk about it, but it still has to run by him, and he might still have final say here.
Yeah, I want to dig a little deeper into that, because that was, to me, I think, a slip up on his part. I don't think he meant to say what he said there. So again, you know, he's asked if he'd relinquish personnel duties. For whatever collectively we decide to as an organization is the best thing. I have multiple roles in that, and I rely on a lot of people to help me in those responsibilities. If somebody's got to have a final say, I rely on a lot of other people to help. However, that process is, I'm only a part of it. So to me, like, we know who has final say. It's Bill. It's Bill. Somebody's got to have the final say. I rely on a lot of people to help. That's him saying he is the final say. And then he says, however that process is, I'm only a part of it. Okay, well, you're a big part. That to me is him setting up. It's not my fault. And I don't know who the fall guy is. If it'll probably be Matt Groh. Maybe it's Elliott Wolf. I don't know. There's going to be whether Bill stays or leaves, there's going to be a fall guy here somewhere for the personnel issues. And I know people aren't super thrilled with Matt Groh. I get that. Bill Belichick had the final say on all of it. And when he says it there, and then he kind of jumps back because he doesn't want Tyquan Thornton on his resume. He doesn't want Mac Jones on his resume. He doesn't want N'Keal Harry on his resume. You don't get to say you have the final say and then say you're a part of the process. Okay, you're a part of the process. You're the biggest part. You're the one ultimately saying yes or no. I guess that is technically a part, but I thought that kind of set up. I just said Bill set this whole thing up as if he's staying, right? That was the one point I looked at, and it sounded like an exit strategy of Bill saying, yeah, I was a part of it. It wasn't all me. Even though he says there, he kind of alludes to the fact he has final say. He wants to know, and all the moves were not all on him.
Yep. Literally goes from I have final say to I rely on a lot of other people to help and
Right.
part of that process. So that was interesting, but I didn't necessarily, read that and listen to that and just say, oh, you can bring in a GM and he's going to be completely hands off and coach the team and give up these personnel duties. It's still, if that's kind of the strategy, whether you're giving Groh more duties or you're bringing in someone like a Dave Ziegler or John Robinson, Bill's still going to be very hands-on in that department if he's here. And that's something we've talked a lot. Like, even if you bring someone in, they're still going to have Bill Belichick in their shadow, who, these guys have all previously worked under Bill Belichick. So he's still going to be there. He's probably going to wear you down kind of throughout the year and still get his way. And then even if they bring players in, right, like they draft the first round receiver, then is coach Bill Belichick going to just put him on the bench because he can't block, right? So that's still kind of a weird dynamic there. And I don't know. A lot of people were running with, oh, he's giving up personnel duties. He's going to coach the team and it's all going to be kind of sunshine and rainbows. That's not really how I interpreted that quote.
I just want to jump in with this real quick. Somebody asked this: when there is news about Belichick, and either way, will there be emergency podcasts? Most likely, yes. It's not going to be the minute of, right? We both have stuff to do for our respective jobs, but if it's Thursday morning, we'll just do the usual Thursday night show. But like, if it were to happen tomorrow morning, we'd probably do a podcast at some point tomorrow. So just make sure you subscribe to Patriots Press Pass channel, because you'll be notified when that is, and follow us on Twitter as well. I'll hide this. You can see our Twitter accounts down there in the window, at Real Alex Barth, at I am Brian Hines. I meant to say it off the top of the show. When we do get news, unless it's, just lines up with the regularly scheduled show. And I the last two co-hosts, Brian, I was never that lucky. Stuff would always break right after the show. With you, we've been lucky so far, knock on wood. But within 24 hours, we'll have a show. I would bank on that.
Absolutely. I figured we'd log off for the night and we'll get a press release or something within.
So last year, the Thursday night show is me and Mike. Mike said if that happens, he wants to come on again. We'll see. Okay.
He's always welcome. But so we'll have something as soon as possible whenever that news breaks. But we also heard yesterday that Jeff Howe came out last night and said Bill and Kraft met yesterday as we expected. They're going to meet again sometime this week. And then he said Josh McDaniels could work his way back into the fold here as maybe Bill's pitch as, hey, we're going to bring Josh in and help the offense, right? Help him get the offense back on track. He said, Kraft's a big fan of Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels was in attendance on Sunday, the last week of the season. So what were kind of your thoughts on potentially bringing Josh back? And then we had the report that maybe Scott Pioli could get his name back in the personnel duty. So like Bill's pitch kind of right now sounds like, hey, let's just bring the band back together. Let's get all these experienced guys, rehaul the staff that way, and that's how we're going to kind of fix this thing.
So that kind of worries me. I'm not entirely opposed to Josh McDaniels coming back. I think he is good with quarterbacks, but McDaniels, Pioli, there was even some whisper of Brian Flores right a couple weeks ago. What worries me, if you remember back when we talked about the Herald article and about Adrian Clem, that it sort of feels like they're just pigeonholing coaches and to try to recreate what was already here instead of letting the coaches coach on their own. And I wonder if Bill's pitch to the Crafts is essentially, you want the glory days again? Fine. We'll bring everybody back. We'll get the band back together. Now, you can get most of that band back together. There's one guy you're not getting. There's actually a couple guys you're not getting back on the coaching side. You're not getting Dante Scarnecchia back. You're not getting Ivan Fears back. And obviously, you're not getting Tom Brady back.
Yeah.
So how far does that really go, as opposed to just being like, okay, it is time to move on. It is time to try things a different way. Start to build a new identity post Brady. So I'm not totally opposed to Josh McDaniels, but I just think a wholesale reset of bringing everybody back you can isn't the answer either. On Pioli, I wonder what that conversation was, because Ben Volen reported they talked. Pioli's been out of the league for 5 years. He's got a very cushy TV gig. There was a report from Ian Rappaport heading into the Jets game that Robert Kraft was talking to a lot of people to basically get a feel for what he should do with Bill Belichick. I wonder if that was the conversation with Pioli. Not will you come back, but what do you think we should do? Right? Just kind of one time, let me pick your brain kind of thing. I still don't see it with Pioli. Dimitroff makes more sense. I could see John Robinson, but certainly not if you're hiring Mike Vrabel. That's the last thing you want. But yeah, Pioli's a really interesting one to me. That conversation could have been a number of things.
Yeah, because he was someone we talked about with these GMs that are familiar with Bill, but like it's tough to see him giving up that TV job that he's obviously doing very well at, and that's a comfy job, as you hinted at there. So that would be kind of a weird one. Josh though, like it would, if you're just adding Josh McDaniels to this staff, that's kind of a weird dynamic with him and Bill O'Brien, like, because O'Brien is offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. So where is Josh fitting in there? If you have Drake May or Jaden Daniels at number 3, like who is that? What's that like pecking order, right? Like who is he listening to? How is that working? And then like, is Josh just an assistant coach? And now you have Joe Judge and Josh McDaniels and all these assistant head coaches. Like that just seems like it would be kind of a weird dynamic. Now, if you're talking someone comes in and cleans out Bill O'Brien and his offensive staff, and then Josh McDaniels is the offensive coordinator, maybe that's the route. But that seems like kind of a weird dynamic to have all these guys who are good coaches, but you know, they're all former head coaches. They all called plays. Like that just seems like it'd be kind of a weird dynamic in there.
Yeah. And it's, you know, is O'Brien back? Is he not back? I don't entirely see what Josh McDaniels' role would be. Does he take a quarterback coach role? Because it's not like he's behind somebody who's going to be gone in a year.
Yeah.
Right. O'Brien might not have that many head coaching opportunities either. So it's not like McDaniel's like, all right, I'll wait a year and then I'll be LC again and then it's all good. You know, where is the extension from that? So again, I'm not entirely opposed to the general concept of bringing him back, but you got to show me exactly what it looks like before I definitively say yes or no.
Yeah, it'd be a weird kind of dynamic there. But I mean, the one coach I'm waiting for them to actually bring back from Vegas is Carmen Brasillo right now, like the old O-line coach. And
if you're going to bring anybody back,
like that's the guy I've been looking at, because the Adrian Clem thing seems like it's nearing an end. Of course, you hope, you know, he gets healthy, but then they'll probably have to figure that out at some point after they make a head coaching decision. And, you know, Carmen Brasillo is like, he was very good in his time here. He's done great work in Vegas with that offensive line. He's still the Vegas O-line coach, but with that, you know, they're interviewing head coaches and GMs. He actually interviewed for the New York Giants offensive line coach today. So they're letting him interview even for lateral jobs out there with question marks on their staff. So that's the one guy, like if you want to go out and get a former assistant, especially one of these Vegas guys, like Carmen Brasillo would be the guy I'm eyeing for, not Josh McDaniels. But
yeah, because again, if you're trying to replicate Scarnecchia, that's a guy that worked directly for Scarnecchia, not played for him 20 years ago. He's as close as you're going to get. And I'm not saying they have to do that, but if that's what they want, Brasillo is the best candidate.
Yep. agree with you there. So maybe we'll get that. Hopefully we'll get that at some point here. But yeah, I mean, anything else from Bill, that his press conference, or believe we can get into Vrabel in a second here, but I don't know, was there anything else from Bill that kind of stood out to you?
That was pretty much it, I think, for Bill.
Yeah.
Just at the end, it was funny. If this is it for him going out by complaining that Phil Perry was asking follow-up questions, what's going on? What are we doing here? That was outstanding. That was great. That was classic.
It's the perfect way to go out for him.
Perfect
way. But we can jump to Mike Vrabel very quickly, but before we do that, let's hear from our friends over at FanDuel.
If I can find the video.
NFL season is wrapping up, and there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Now, the app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays, find bets in the new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, so the news of the day in the NFL world was the Titans surprisingly fired Mike Vrabel, who obviously has some connections and ties here. He's been reported as, in the past few weeks as Robert Kraft's kind of home run hire if they do move on from Bill Belichick. So obviously a lot of ties, connections. This was a guy you were looking at, even if he stayed in Tennessee, people were talking about a trade candidate, and now he's free, available to sign. He's still getting paid in Tennessee. So if this is the path they want, it's kind of right there and easy for them to go to.
And I'll say this to the people who want Ben Johnson, want Bobby Slowick. I'm not saying you're wrong, but all of the reporting, like, it's not like it's most, like 100%. I don't think there's been anything on the contrary. 100% of the reporting says the Crafts want familiarity. They want a name they know. They want somebody they know. They want somebody they've worked with in the past. Mike Vrabel is, as crazy as this sounds, as outside of the organization a hire as you're going to get. Remember, he never coached for Belichick. He never coached. Well, I guess he was a linebackers coach under Romeo Crennel, who was a defensive coordinator. But, like, I don't even think he coached for anybody in Belichick's tree. So, from everything we've heard,
Bill O'Brien.
Oh, O'Brien was the. Yeah. You're right. That's my bad. I don't know why I thought that was after O'Brien, but he never coached for Belichick. He is outside of that purview. He never coached here. None of that. He is as far removed, and you might be rolling your eyes at that, saying, "What are you talking about? Far removed?" He was here. They gave him a red jacket, 3 months ago. Yes, doesn't mean it's not as far removed as you can get. If that's what and he's it's going to look different. Who's his offensive coordinator going to be? Some of you are mentioning Arthur Smith there in the chat. Arthur Smith is a not like Shanahan, more McVay offense guy.
More of like that West Coasty,
right? West Coast. It's what they tried to run a couple years ago, but they'd have a guy that has actually run it instead of a defensive coach trying to implement it. And Matt Patricia. Now, would he bring in Arthur Smith, or would it still be O'Brien or McDaniels? Like, that's a question, right? But this is somebody who's been elsewhere and succeeded his own way. Remember when they came here in the playoff and they beat the Patriots, and there was that report that they were like, you could hear them screaming down the halls, and the Titans players after they won and all that. Like, that was not a Patriots team. And I don't mean that in a bad way or a good way. It's just different. Mike Vrabel's as different as you're going to get. He's also a damn good football coach.
Yeah.
He's the Titans did not have the most talented roster. Took them to the playoffs 3 years in a row. They were the 1 seed 1 year. They went to the AFC Championship game. He won a Coach of the Year. He's a good football coach, and that matters. He's a leader of men. I think he's not afraid to go against the grain. He manages the game well, as most defensive coaches do. There's a lot to like there. So I'm in on Vrabel. The one other thing, one of the hottest GM candidates on the market, Because everybody's talked about, all right, well, who do you make him to the GM with? Some people have brought up John Robinson because they were together in Tennessee. You don't do that. John Robinson trading A.J. Brown is a big part of the reason Mike Vrabel is no longer in Tennessee. Those two will not get along. Thomas Dimitroff, people talk about him, Dave Ziegler. Alex Peters, the assistant general manager in San Francisco, is one of the hottest GM candidates on the market this year. Those two, it was reported on NFL Network like an hour ago, still have a relationship from their time together. Peters was a scout in New England for 2 non-consecutive stints from like the early 2000s to the early 2010s. I think it's like 03 to 06 and then 08 to 11. Don't quote me on that, but it's about in that window that he was here.
When Vrabel was here as a player.
Right. At least I think he was here a little bit later too, but the point is they know each other. So if you have Peters and Vrabel, that's a pretty good start. That doesn't guarantee you anything. But you have a guy who's 2 years removed from winning Coach of the Year, and the guy who was the right-hand man to building what is probably the best roster in the NFL top to bottom. I mean, I'd take that.
Yeah.
I'd absolutely take that. Now, there is the concern of a defensive coach and what that means for quarterback development, who's your OC. But again, whether it's Josh McDaniels, who's never going to get another head coaching job, Bill O'Brien, who's probably a couple years away, or even Arthur Smith, who's a couple years away, you're going to have some stability. You'd assume it's going to be one of those three. I can't imagine it'd be anybody else. It's going to be one of those three. Maybe McDaniels isn't getting a head coaching job. The other two might, again, eventually, but you're talking about 2 to 3 years. It gives you some stability for your young quarterback. You're not talking about Bobby Slowick in Houston 1 year, one and done, right? So if they're going to move on from Bill, look, I really like Gerard Mayo too. I think he brings a lot of the same characteristics. The difference is Vrabel's done this before. He knows, not only has he done it, he's proven he can do it at a high level. And that's worth something. That's not me saying that Mayo would be a bad option. I think Gerard Mayo's high on my list as well. But the experience is certainly a factor. And yeah, I'm in on it. If it's Mike Vrabel, I'd be in on that. The other thing I wonder, and I don't know how relevant this is, because Adam Schefter reported this morning, Vrabel is a tier 1 coaching candidate, whatever the hell that means. Let's say he doesn't get any head coaching offers. I love the idea of Mike Vrabel coming in as like a football czar, as a right-hand man of the coach, what Patricia was the year before he was the OC. And whether that's to Belichick, whether that's to Mayo. Really, I'd love it with Mayo. Now, I don't know why if they'd hire Mayo over Vrabel or if it would just be Vrabel. And again, there's a ton of hypotheticals here that probably won't happen.
That would be if we go back to that press release last year, like whatever they agreed on with Mayo, like if they feel like they kind of have to give him that job, or if that would be like.
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
I don't believe that is the case, that there were any guarantees.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean nothing was said. But I don't believe that there were any guarantees given.
That would just be like the one thing that I feel like might keep them from hiring Vrabel over Mayo, or one of the things like experience.
But look, and I'm very high on Mike Vrabel. I'm obviously high on Vrabel. I'm very high on Gerard Mayo. I am. Vrabel has a better resume. He's a more proven commodity, and I think this is whether you think it's right to move on from Belichick or not. It's a tremendous risk. Sometimes the right thing can be a risk, and it's a tremendous risk, especially if Belichick goes elsewhere and starts winning, because if you're the Crafts, then it's you, right? Brady left and won elsewhere, and you stopped winning, and everybody said it was Bill. If Bill now leaves and starts winning, who's left? They want a proven commodity. They don't necessarily want somebody learning on the job. Now, maybe they feel Mayo's up to it, but Vrabel, you have that, you can fall back on, hey, I've seen him take a team to the AFC Championship game. I've seen him win Coach of the Year. Like he can do it.
I also think he would kind of love the opportunity to be the guy who comes after Belichick, right? Like be the guy who fills Belichick's shoes, just his whole personality and everything. And he would be a really good fit at that. And I agree with you. Like Mayo, I think would be a very good head coach, but from going to Bill to a first-time head coach, who he hasn't even called like defensive plays, right? Like that's Steve's job. That might be a big risk, a big jump for the Crafts. So they might look at the experience of Vrabel, that whole body of work, and really prefer that. And I think Vrabel, he's a great coach. He'd be a great fit in that role. I would want to know right off the bat, though, like who's the offensive coordinator? That's a big one. I'd ask him about the A.J. Brown trade. I know it all looks like that was John Robinson based off the War Room reaction and that whole video, but I want to hear how that whole thing went down, and then I want to know, like, what's the role or what's the process here? Who we're going to bring in as a GM? Who are we going to get to pick players? Like, those are my three kind of things I want to hear from Vrabel. But yeah, I think he'd be a really good fit, and I still think Mayo would be a really good fit if they want to go down one of those paths. But I think the experience of Vrabel might kind of push him over the edge here, and then hopefully maybe he comes in and he says, Gerard will give you the defensive coordinator title, and he might take that. Maybe he wants to go elsewhere and explore other opportunities at that point. But that I think that would be a really good setup and a really good dynamic between those two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I see someone in the comments keeps asking about Eric Bieniemy. I mean, I'd love Eric Bieniemy as an offensive guy, but it just goes back to what you said at the start there. Like, they're not going to hire someone who has zero ties to this organization. And Bieniemy is one of those guys who just has no connections here. So I think he's a very good coach. He'd give you that offensive mind that you could pair with a young quarterback, so you don't have to recycle through these offensive coordinators. But I just don't see that. I still think it's going to be someone with ties here to the organization.
Yeah, same thing. It's just they're not looking at guys they're not familiar with. I think they're not looking at guys they're not familiar with, and Bieniemy's never worked for him. They've had no interaction with them. I'm not saying he shouldn't get a job. Honestly, if I'm Washington, I'm just promoting him. I'm not letting him interview. I'm just making him the head coach. But yeah, I don't think the Patriots are going to look in that direction. Yep. Same for Harbaugh. Like, if they're going to really go outside, I think Harbaugh, because he's such a proven commodity, would be the guy. The thing about Harbaugh is he's a flight risk. He doesn't stay anywhere for an extended period of time. Even if he's had success, that scares the crap out of me, that he's just going to leave you high and dry. There's also some baggage with him. I wouldn't touch Harbaugh. There is upside there, but there's a lot about him that scares me.
Yep.
As successful as he's been.
Yeah. I know he's had success in the pros too, but the whole college coaches thing kind of always scares me too. That jump is weird at times. So yeah, I'm still, Vrabel, Mayo, I think those are the top two guys here. If they do decide to move on from Bill, obviously, we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But what do you think the timeline is we're looking at here? Because we've banged the table that this needs to move as quickly as possible, because you see all these guys getting interviews. Adam Peters already has these GM interviews lined up, but could it drag out maybe if they know, we're just elevating the guy already on our staff in Mayo, or maybe they might know that we have Vrabel if we want him. We just have to, give him a wink and a, handshake under the table, and then we can kind of drag this out. Maybe I still don't expect a trade of Bill, but do you think this could kind of drag it out if those are the two candidates and they know they have one of them in their back pocket?
No, because you need to know what's coming, and you still got to get in on a GM if you move on from Bill. I'll say this, just from what I've kind of, and I really, this is super well kept. There's nothing definitive out there, but the one kind of theme you get a hint of is the Patriots aren't going to let anybody, whatever the decision is, nobody's beating the Patriots to making it public.
Yeah.
This is not, it doesn't feel like it's going to be something that Schefter or Rappaport or even any of the local guys get. When the time comes for the decision to be known, the Patriots will make it known. That is kind of what that feels like a trend through all the different things that we've heard. And there's a lot of different things floating around right now. My hypothetical timeline at the beginning of this, and this is no inside information, this is just me speculating, just knowing how kind of businesses run. Meet on Monday. Meet again on Tuesday morning. Tuesday to deliberate. Wednesday to make a decision to figure out messaging. And then either Wednesday night or Thursday morning. That was kind of my guess. Was because once the decisions, they were going to meet. So they met yesterday and today, right? Sleep on it. Tomorrow's the day you make your decision and figure out how you want to go about it. And then that gives you Thursday putting it out there. that doesn't mean that's definitely going to happen. Maybe it takes an extra day. Maybe it's Friday. Maybe it does bleed into next Monday. I think they have to know by like next Monday's the latest. Like, whatever it is, 5 days from now, 6 days from now. You got to know by then, because at that point, you got to start getting ready for the offseason and the Senior Bowl and in free agency and all of that. I do think we're probably closer to hearing than not, just based on that timeline. But, it could be another 48 hours, and that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. It does feel like, though, because there was that nightmare for us who cover it, where they're just going to keep Bill, decide they're keeping Bill, and he's just going to show up at the Senior Bowl, and he's just there on their behalf, and that's that. We're done. I do think there's going to be some sort of something, whatever it, and maybe it's just a statement like last year. Maybe it's a full-on press conference. Maybe it's a video. I don't know. But it does feel like one way or the other, we will be informed of the decision when it's made. It's just a matter of when and how that is.
Yeah. The fact that Bill, after the game even or on Monday, like he never says he's going to sit down with Robert at the end of the year. Like the fact that he addressed his future could be a question mark. I think they're going to acknowledge it somehow if he does stay. Obviously, they have to say something if he leaves. But I think we'll hear something hopefully over the next 2 days. Again, that press release last year with Mayo and the offensive coordinator came Thursday night, so that was the timeline for that. We'll see. Maybe they follow something similar on this one, but yeah, hopefully the next 48 hours we'll hear something. We should get something from the team. Yeah. It should come from the team, some statements. So that's kind of the clock, I guess, for that one. But any other things you had on Mayo or Adam Peters or any of those guys, or anything else from the coaching circus from the last 2 days that we didn't hit on?
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Harbaugh. I do wonder, just because he's a little bit younger, and we've heard interest in Belichick to varying levels. The Commanders are both very interested, not interested at all. The Panthers are interested, but not really. The Raiders are interested, but that makes no sense. We're now hearing the Falcons is pretty heavy on the Falcons, saying that that's a possibility. Would Bill go to Atlanta? That's another question. You figure if Bill Belichick's available, he's the top name available. I do wonder if, like, the Harbaugh timeline will make it interesting too, because if Bill knows he's out, he's going to push for the Crafts to make that public as quickly as possible so he can do what he needs to do. And does Harbaugh announce something this week? Because I got to tell you, the way I know he said something last night about going back, the way he handled.
He said like they're pushing spring ball back or something, like he was planning his schedule or something. I don't know. It was weird.
Well, yeah, because in the NFL, spring ball starts later than it does in college. He's handled the last 2 weeks like somebody who's not going to be back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Just the whole cycle. I don't know how much that will ultimately relate to the Patriots, but the whole coaching cycle, if Harbaugh gets injected into this, what is a very this is a pretty crazy coaching cycle as far as coaching cycles go. If Harbaugh's injected into it, that would be very interesting.
Yep, I agree. One more before we switch topics here from the chat.
Yeah.
To you, would you rather have, if it is Vrabel as head coach, would you rather have McDaniels or keep O'Brien? I'll give Arthur Smith as your third choice there.
Who's the quarterback? If they're sticking with Mac, give me Josh McDaniels. If it's Jaden Daniels, probably O'Brien, just because I think you can run some of that stuff you ran in Houston. I even probably, I think, yeah, it's tough.
No
That's
Arthur
tough.
Smith love?
Maybe. I don't know. I still don't. I just don't think they're going to push O'Brien out. And it's one thing to have O'Brien and McDaniels together. I don't see the path. I shouldn't say don't see the path. I mean, the path is you get rid of O'Brien, you don't hire McDaniels. But yeah, you're like I take. He made it work with. He butchered it Atlanta this year. He really butchered it. That's like if they were to get like a Baker Mayfield or somebody, then maybe Arthur Smith. I'm not totally opposed because he never really had a shot in Atlanta. Like they never actually invested in a quarterback. Like Desmond Ridder was a fine flyer prospect, but he was never somebody you thought was going to get to that level. And Taylor Heineke is what he is. He's a high level backup. He's Bailey Zappi kind. So maybe if you give him a real quarterback prospect, he can make something out of that. But yeah, I think it's, what do you want? Who do you want your quarterback to be? What kind of offense do you want your quarterback running? And that, I don't mean to give such a wishy-washy answer, but tell me what kind of quarterback, tell me who your quarterback is. Tell me what kind of offense you want to run. And I think that answers the question. It's not a definitive, yes, I definitely want one of the three, no matter what.
Yeah. Well, Arthur Smith is free too. I just, that's something I've never cared about, but it is just funny how all these coaches we're talking about are.
Well, they're all free. McDaniels is free.
Who continue
Smith is
to
free.
be
Vrabel's free.
Who continue to be guys who were fired and you don't have to pay, just like Patricia and Joe Judge were. It's just kind of a funny reoccurring theme there. But if it was O'Brien, do you think that would be weird at all? Because, he used to be Vrabel's boss when Vrabel was a DC and a linebackers coach. O'Brien was a head coach in Houston. Do you think that would be weird at all if it was kind of reversed and then Vrabel was the head coach and O'Brien was the DC?
It could be. I feel like that's happened before. I can't think of an example, but I do feel like I've seen it. It comes down to, I go back to that Harold story. Are they going to be able to coexist? I think they're both great football minds. If they get along, I think it's a really logical pairing. But if they can't coexist, would I bump Bill O'Brien out of the building to make Mike Vrabel the head coach? Absolutely. And then that's where Arthur Smith or Josh McDaniels come in.
Yeah.
Right. So if they can get along, I guess you try it. If they can't get along, I wouldn't not hire Mike Vrabel just because, I want to keep Bill O'Brien. And I would say the same about Gerard Mayo. If Gerard and Bill O'Brien don't get along, there's been some rumors of that. Or I shouldn't say rumor, speculation on that. Some people thought that, O'Brien may have been the source for the Greg Bedard report. Bill O'Brien, I respect Bill O'Brien. I do. He didn't show me anything this year that he can't, if it was really that you can't afford to lose him, you make him the head coach. And that doesn't seem like it's going to happen. So if it's what it takes to make Mayo the head coach or to make Vrabel the head coach, yeah, I'd move on from Bill O'Brien.
Yep. So that's about the recap from the last 2 days of a crazy head coaching circus. Again, we are still on Belichick watch, so we will keep our eyes and ears out for them. For that news, we will come on here again ASAP once that news is determined to talk about that. But we can move on to the actual football game that happened on Sunday and the ramifications from that. But before we do that, speaking of all these jobs that are available, that these coaches are looking for, we can hear from LinkedIn very quickly.
And a good toss there, Brian. This show is brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking himself the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? I don't think it's just small business owners that are asking that, by the way, not just small business owners. Yeah. LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. This feels pointed. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Wouldn't it be great, right? If Patriots just pop on LinkedIn Jobs and, use linkedin.com/beat and boom, the perfect coaching candidate would just pop up. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way in the football field, but in other fields of business, it can work that way for you. You can use LinkedIn Beat to find your ideal candidate. LinkedIn Jobs, to find your LinkedIn candidate. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Obviously, Patriots taking a little bit longer than that. Again, you want to achieve your goals in 2024, whether that goal's getting back to the playoffs or I don't know, whatever your small business goal is. LinkedIn Jobs can help you out. It's why these small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/beat. That's linkedin.com/beat, BEAT, to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Actually, speaking of hiring and jobs, this actually has nothing to do with the Patriots. I just feels appropriate to share here. Did you see the job posting Topgolf put up today?
I did not, no.
So Topgolf is hiring It's just story time right now because it's, again, this is what some companies have to do to hire, and maybe Topgolf should use linkedin.com/beat for this one. They're hiring a global head of golf footwear and apparel. Here are the qualifications they're asking for: 27 years of industry experience in footwear and apparel.
27.
Must have started golfing before the age of 5. Must have shot a 48 for 9 holes at age 3. Must have played at least 373 events with no less than 82 tour victories. Must have won the Varden Trophy no less than 9 times. You see where this is going? Must have won at least 4 major tournaments in a row. Preferred runner-up no less than 31 times. Finished first in at least 15 major tournaments. Location, Jupiter, Florida, preferred but flexible. Education, Stanford, preferred. If the joke is Tiger Woods split with Nike and is going to start, he's got to get his next apparel deal. So that's all stuff that describes Tiger Woods. So
that's good. I didn't see that one.
it doesn't have to be that hard if you visit linkedin.com/beat.
Yeah. Hopefully the Patriots application isn't as detailed. You don't need to be that.
Played linebacker from 2000 to 2011. Won
Patriots
3
Hall of
Super
Fame
Bowls.
member.
Right. Only defensive player to catch touchdowns in multiple Super Bowls, right?
Actually, it could literally just be Patriots linebacker, and that could be it.
Well, I'm telling you, how about the world where you have Mike Vrabel as your head coach, Gerard Mayo stays at DC, Jamie Collins and Dante Hightower have both talked about they want to get into coaching. There's your linebackers coaches. Just build the whole thing out of linebackers. Why not?
Bring all the linebackers back. Might as well.
Right.
Might as well. All right, but there was a football game Sunday. The Patriots lost the last game of the season to the New York Jets, 17-3, in a snowy, slushy, just ugly game. But positives with the loss, they clinched the number 3 pick in the draft. So that is where they will be picking. We have 4 months of draft talk that we will be getting into here shortly. And I mean, number 3 pick, it's the highest since what? Bledsoe, Willie?
I think since Bledsoe.
So do you have I don't know if you have any thoughts on the game or anything you want to get into, but we can talk about the pick and the national championship game last night if you want to go that route.
Yeah, it was nice to finally cover a snow game. Patriots haven't picked 3rd since 1966. They picked McGinnis in 1994, which was 4th. The year before, they picked Bledsoe 1st. So their previous highest pick this century was Richard Seymour, who they took 6th in 2001.
So been 20 years.
Been a minute, yeah. Cool to cover snow game. I think we just kind of saw where the flaws are. The offensive line not good enough. The quarterback position not good enough. They seem done with Mac Jones. Him being made inactive, I think, sent a clear message. They need more wide receiver help. It was another lazy game from Devontae Parker. Tyquan Thornton can't play because he's hurt. I think that was – if I could describe that game in one way, if they had any doubt about all the stuff we've talked about heading into the offseason, game hammered home every single point that they knew to address in the offseason. Like, sometimes maybe the last game of the year goes well and you think, maybe we're closer than we thought. No, okay, here we go. Like, some things are starting to click. There was none of that. Everything that we've hammered, the line, the quarterback, the receivers, the penalty issues, the special teams issues, you saw it all. They died the way they lived, the 2023 Patriots. They went out the way they spent the whole year.
Yep, it encapsulated the whole season. That one game, from Bailey Zappi throwing 2 interceptions on one drive to receivers just not getting open to the left tackle spot being a turnstile. That was just how it's been all year, and you saw it there. Even though the conditions were bad, I get it, but it was the whole season summed up into one game. So they do have that number 3 pick. You're probably thinking early quarterback if maybe Williams or May falls, maybe Jaden Daniels shoots up here, but doesn't look like it'll be Michael Penix at that spot after, he had a rough national championship last night against Michigan, who are the national champions now. So I'm sorry. I know that must have hurt you watching Penix last night, but what'd you think?
Yeah, it was a bummer. A lot of people, kind of clearly only watch one game. I think a lot of people heard the hype about Penix and decided to turn that game on and have never watched him besides that. Here's what I'll say. I think he set the ceiling against Texas. And I said after the Texas game, that was a great performance. Can he do it against a better defense in Michigan? That's the big question. He couldn't. He set the ceiling against Texas. He set the floor against Michigan. In reality, and what the rest of the tape shows from the regular season, he's somewhere in between. He's somewhere in between, and it's going to come down to player development, what you put around him. Pressure's an issue with him, and a lot of people point to that, and that's not wrong. It is something he needs to work on, but also you hope when you draft a guy, you get him protected better than he was protected last night, because that offensive line, you think Penix's draft stock took a hit? I'm blanking on the name of Washington's right tackle, but Brian, did you see there were plays he wasn't getting out of his stance? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There were plays where
it was bad.
The rusher is Roger Rosengarten. The rusher's around the corner before he stands up. So that's not to excuse Penix. It was a bad game. The accuracy, missing some of those open throws, like he can't be doing that. Accuracy, deep ball accuracy is a carrying trait for him, and he didn't show it last night. And that wasn't good. He got banged up a couple times, and he stayed in the game, so credit to him, but that's not what teams want to see. I still think he's QB4.
Yeah.
I think if he'd had another game like he had against Michigan, you're talking about a top 10 pick. He didn't. I still think he's a first-round pick. It's probably more likely in the 20s now than maybe higher up, but I still think he's a better option than Bo Nix. I still think he's a better option than J.J. McCarthy. Quinn Ewers, I don't know. We got to see if Quinn Ewers comes out first and foremost. When I say Penix is QB4, I'm going on the reporting that Ewers is going back to school. Ewers comes out, I'd really have to think about that one, honestly, because that's a real floor ceiling thing. But I thought, again, he set the floor, he set the ceiling. Watch all the games. Don't just watch last night. Everybody trying to take their victory lap on me. Like I say this all the time. The pre-draft process is a process. As new information is added, you adjust. I hadn't seen that game before last night. Now I have. I had said I want to see what he did against Michigan, which, by the way, let's also give some credit. Michigan's defense, unbelievable. Unbelievable. And Mike Sanders still, Everett High grad, Patriot. Yeah. Go get me that guy early on day 3, please. Would be a great fit. And I'll take any of those Michigan offensive linemen, too. And the way they were going, and they had Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards going. Blake Corum, another guy I'd love to see here. We can get into that a little bit, but just to finish up on Penix, face a great defense, didn't play well. We learned something. We adjust the projection. It's a process. It's what we do. If that's the only game you've watched, I'd encourage you to go back and watch him against Oregon. He played Oregon twice. Oregon has a great defense. Not Michigan, but a great defense. You got to go, don't just base it all off one game. That's not how any of this works. So he did not have a good game last night. I say that did not help his draft stock. It hurt it. And it's going to give more credence to the people who talk about age and injuries, because they're going to say he got banged up in that game. He looks further away than maybe people think. He doesn't have as much time to develop. But ultimately, I think a lot of teams like to look at ceiling rather than floor. The ceiling is still real. Whether he's as close to that ceiling as we thought, I think is what you reevaluate. But the ceiling is still real. I think teams will look at the ceiling and a chance to have a 5th year of control, and he finds that somebody ends up taking him in the first round. I would not touch him at 3. And by the way, I wouldn't have taken him at 3 before last night.
Yeah.
I still had Daniels and May ahead of him. But now you're talking about there's a run. Let me pull this up here. So you look at the draft, pick one's going to be one of the first 2 picks is going to be a quarterback, possibly 2, right? It's the Chicago trade down one with Washington and take MHJ second or not. Patriots are going to take a quarterback. So you're looking at 2 or 3 quarterbacks off the board with the first 5 picks. Arizona and the Chargers are sticking with their guys. The Giants may or may not be a quarterback team. But you then have, so this is 7 through 14. So this is a span of 8 picks. Tennessee, Atlanta, Chicago, the Jets, Minnesota, Denver, Vegas, New Orleans. Outside of Chicago, those are all quarterback teams. Again, Tennessee, especially now that Vrabel's gone, that they're going to get a reset on that. Will Levis is not the guy. Atlanta, definitely a quarterback team. Jets, quarterback. They should be a quarterback team. They might not be because they don't want to piss off Rodgers, but should be. Minnesota, quarterback team. Denver, absolutely a quarterback team. Vegas, quarterback team. New Orleans should be, whether or not they recognize it, but they should be. So if May...
Even after that, like Seattle should be a quarterback team.
So if May, Williams, and Daniels, the three of those guys go in the top 5, which I don't think is unrealistic, even if it's one or two of those teams trading up, all 8 of those teams are going to go without taking a quarterback. I just don't see it. And Penix is the logical next guy. Penix is still, I think, the 4th guy. So maybe he kind of teeters a little more towards the 20s. You mentioned Seattle. They're at 16. Maybe Pittsburgh, wherever they end up, that'll be somewhere in the high 20s, 20, 21, 22. They should be a quarterback team. I think it's pretty clear what Kenny Pickett is at this point. But there's no way every single one of those teams passes on a quarterback. I just don't see it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think he's still QB4. I think it's a pretty good gap between 2 and 3. But again, it only takes one of those teams to say, hey, we need a quarterback, and we really like Michael Penix. We have him rated so high on our board that we're going to pick him here in the first round. And, they go back and they watch all those good games and those good performances against Oregon. I get, like, the thing that worried me about last night, I know it was only one game, but it was, you saw Michigan take advantage of his weaknesses, which was like throwing over the middle of the field under pressure, and he continued to struggle with that, some of those accuracy issues that you talked about downfield. So that's what kind of concerned me more, but I still, I had him at QB4 going into the game with a good sized gap between Jaden Daniels and him, and I think that's still where he resides. And of course, this is all caveat that his medicals check out still.
Right. And I still say this, and I said this last week after the Texas game when I was saying he might be a top 10 pick. If he doesn't pass the medicals,
he's out.
5th round at the earliest. My record on quarterbacks who can't stay on the field, Brian, is very well known. Everybody knows how I feel about Jimmy Garoppolo. If you're not comfortable he's going to stay healthy, then it's not, maybe if his medicals are bad, he falls to the 2nd. No, that's a premium asset. That's not a guy you're wishy-washy on. You take in the 2nd round. So, yeah, he's got to be healthy for all this work. I just want to pull this one up real quick. He was blitzed most of the game. He wasn't.
Yeah,
he wasn't. That's just that Michigan defensive line was so good, good. And their offensive line may have been better. And I'll say this. Blake Corum's probably out of the question because I don't think they can afford to take a running back on day 2. I was hoping Blake Corum early day 3. I don't think that's happening. Donovan Edwards might still be early day 3. If they want to take Donovan Edwards in the 4th round as the, next up to Ramondre Stevenson, hell yeah. I would be all on board on that. He was in, both those running backs were really good last night. I thought Roman Wilson had a decent game. How'd you feel about JJ McCarthy last night?
I mean, he completed 10 passes. It was just another one of those where it's tough to tell. I mean, he made some plays down the stretch. When they started, Washington kind of adjusted to take away the running game, and then he made some plays with his legs, but he completed 10 passes. I thought, he missed 1 or 2 throws late in the game. It was just kind of more of the same as we saw all year. I don't know. I saw people on Twitter and I see people in the chat now just saying he's a winner. We don't need to just draft a winner. We're beyond that these days. We draft quarterbacks off trades and stuff like that, not just them winning games. So I still haven't seen enough of JJ McCarthy to be like, that's the guy that we need to draft here and fix our quarterback room with him.
It's really easy to be a winner on that, right? Exactly, WH. Great comment. JJ McCarthy has Jimmy G in San Francisco vibes, along for the ride. Exactly. And that's not to say he can't become a good quarterback.
100%, yeah.
Go back to school, right? Roman Wilson's going to be gone. The running backs be gone. What's the tight end's name?
He was awesome, though.
He was really freaking good last night. Michigan has a couple guys in 2025. The corner, and I'm just going to like spout names now because I'm blanking on. I'm blanking.
Loveland was the tight end.
Yeah. Colston Loveland. And then Will Johnson, the corner, number 2, is really good too. But Colston Loveland, like I tweeted last night, like I regret to inform everybody Colston Loveland is not draft eligible this year because boy, is that guy a Patriot. But, go back when a bunch of those guys aren't in school, have some more put on your plate, see what you do. He is young. He's got good size. He's athletic. Maybe he becomes something, but no, he's too far away right now. He's way too far away for me to entertain anything beyond a day 3 pick. And I think a lot of teams will feel that way. Now, look, maybe one team likes him. Maybe there's somebody high up in the front office who's just got the Michigan blinders on and says, this is my guy. And the word gets back to him. He declares for the draft. But right now he comes out. I can't say he's anything more than Zach Wilson.
Yep. I don't know why. I just see Minnesota like 2nd, 3rd round, let him sit behind Kirk Cousins for a year. I think
I want Penix in Minnesota.
That too.
With those receivers, yeah.
Penix, I see like Penix in like Seattle. That's a Pete Carroll move, and then JJ McCarthy in Minnesota or something. But
right,
I don't know. So,
here's how McCarthy gets to be top 15.
Harbaugh will go to LA and draft him 8th
Harbaugh's
overall.
the one picking. Yeah.
But did you see Jimmy G? Speaking of Jimmy G, kind of the shot at Jimmy G in that Apple TV series trailer that dropped today.
No, what was it? I saw the trailer, but I didn't see that. I just saw the thing about playing for Brady.
So. Yeah, that was the big quote. Danny Amendola said we worked for Bill and we're playing for Brady, but they had a quote. Brady was like, there's things that were done that can't be undone, and they flashed to Jimmy G, like an interview with Jimmy G. So might get some good Jimmy G and Brady scoop on that series.
Hey, Martellus Bennett was right, though. Martellus Bennett was right about Jimmy Garoppolo. That's all I'll say.
And Jules. Jules was in that mix too.
And Jules, and I think the McCourties are on the record with that too. And it was Bennett on the McCourties podcast, but they laughed.
That whole team, they didn't disagree. You can put it like that.
Nor should they. Should they.
We were talking about that on Sunday because that 2016 Buffalo game came up because it was like the first time
they only had 2 first downs.
Since that game. So. And that was the game Jimmy G kind of wimped out of because of his thumb. It was his thumb. No, Jacoby had the thumb.
No, Jacoby had the thumb. Jimmy had the shoulder. It's the AC joint.
Yeah, so that was the game that triggered all those comments.
You want to know something wild? Speaking of like the offensive ineptitude of the Jets game?
Let's hear it.
That was the fewest total yards the Patriots have had in a game in the Bill Belichick era. By like 30 yards.
What'd they finish with?
119.
Wow.
Their previous low was 149 against Miami in 21. It was the game in Miami where like they couldn't snap the ball. Brady fumbled 3 times. What a way for Bill to go out. 119 total yards. That would be something.
Yeah, it was a football game. It was a football.
It was certainly one of the games played in NFL history.
It was an interesting one. But hey, they got the 3rd overall pick. We'll get 4 months of mock drafts. Picking number 3. There'll be so many fun avenues and paths to take.
Live mock drafts will be back at some point. I don't think it's going to be this week, but at some point, live mock drafts will be back.
Once all the coaching dust settles, we can start getting into the fun stuff with free agents and mock drafts and all that. We get Senior Bowl announcements today, soon, right?
Is it?
I
mean, a lot of the rosters confirmed, but yeah, that's got to be coming.
Or it was, I think today was the last day underclassmen could declare, so then they can start putting together the lists for those rosters. I believe that's what it was. I was trying to look it up quick, but I can't find it. But yeah, we'll start to get all that fun stuff and get into draft season very quickly here.
Yeah.
But I believe that is it. That is all to talk about today. Again, we will hop on here as quickly as possible whenever we hear anything on Bill Belichick's future with the Patriots. If it comes on Thursday, we'll just be back for our regularly scheduled show that evening. So make sure You again subscribe to Patriots Press Pass if you are not already. Turn on your notifications so you do know when we go live. You can also follow us on Twitter at Real Alex Barth and at I am Brian Hines. You can go read Alex's work over at 985thesportshub.com, and you can read my work at patspulpit.com. Thank you all, as always, for tuning in, and we will see you guys sometime soon.